The emergency alarm screamed as Kade Renar wrestled with the broken controls of his freighter Starling. The hull groaned under atmospheric pressure, and sparks spat from the console like fireflies on a rampage. "Hold together, damn you," Kade muttered, gritting his teeth. His knuckles were white from gripping the control yoke, sweat dripping down into the corner of his eyes. The ship trembled as its right thruster sputtered and died with a mechanical cough. Below, the jagged, rust-colored cliffs of Rylath loomed racing up to meet him. He slammed a fist onto the stabilizer override and yanked hard to the left. The freighter groaned in protest but obeyed, listing sideways as it dropped toward a patch of barren rocky desert nestled between the canyons. Seconds before impact, the retros fired barely. Starling hit the ground with a bone-jarring skid, dragging across the rocky plain in a cloud of red dust and screeching metal, until it finally came to a heaving stop. Kade sat motionless for a moment, blinking through the acrid smoke and haze, his heart pounding. Then, coughing, he released the harness and stumbled from his seat. A quick system scan confirmed his suspicions. Power cells blown, nav systems fried, communications offline, and the thruster useless. He wasn't going anywhere. He grabbed his utility bag and stepped out into the blistering heat of Rylath's noonday sun. The air shimmered with heat waves. In the distance, he could just make out a sprawl of domed buildings and weather-beaten towers, an outpost of sorts. He squinted. "Guess I'm walking." The outpost of Brimvault wasn't exactly welcoming. It looked like a graveyard of mismatched architecture, a shantytown of leftover parts welded together by time and desperation. Sand-coated inhabitants moved in slow, suspicious patterns, all eyes turning toward the lone human, staggering through the heat shimmer. Kade approached the central hub, a squat metal structure with fading signage and a rotating wind turbine that barely turned. "Traveler," a coarse voice called. Kade turned to see a hulking, six-eyed figure leaning against a rusted walker mech. The alien's skin was deep indigo, covered in overlapping plates, like a crustacean. One of its lower arms was missing. "You lost or stupid?" the figure asked, tone unreadable. Crash landed. Kade offered a tight smile. "Name's Renar, freighter pilot. Looking for parts? Or at least water," the alien grunted. "You'll find little of either here, but the tavern's got both sort of. Name's Oric. I keep folks from killing each other around here." "Appreciated." Kade glanced at the nearby entrance where the tavern beckoned with the low hum of heat and noise. "You got a mechanic in town, depends," Oric sniffed. "On your credits. And how badly you're willing to be overcharged." "Story of my life." Inside, the Spit Valve Tavern smelled like old coolant, burnt oil, and regret. Kade stepped over a passed-out miner and made his way to the bar, where a bored, glassy-eyed bartender flicked one of his antennae at him. "Something drinkable," Kade said, tossing down a credit strip. The bartender grunted and poured a cloudy blue liquid into a pitted tin cup. Kade took a cautious sip. It burned like acid and tasted like battery fluid, but it was wet. He sat down and surveyed the place. Drifters, scavengers, and mercs filled the room. Most avoided looking at him. One table, though, caught his eye, a group of armed thugs crowded around a green-skinned server who moved with quiet efficiency and a strange practiced grace. She wasn't like the others. Taller, more upright. Her skin shimmered faintly in the dim light, a shifting jade that hinted at subtle bioluminescence. She carried herself like someone who was used to watching her back, not a local. As she turned to leave the table, one of the thugs grabbed her wrist. "Where you going, pretty thing?" the man rasped, yanking her back. He was a brute of Corrin by the look of him, thick-tusked with cybernetic implants and breath that probably corroded metal. The girl's voice was calm. "Release me." "Sit with me," he sneered, tightening his grip. Kade's jaw clenched. He'd seen this play out before. And while he didn't have time for fights, not on a broken world like this, his conscience didn't allow for silence. He stood, approached the table. The lady said no. The Quran looked up slowly. "And you are someone who's not in the mood." Kade's tone was low measured. "Let go. Now." The bar quieted. Conversation stopped. Even the jukebox crackled into silence. The tension was instant and razor sharp. The Quran released the girl but stood up. He was a head taller than Kade and twice as broad. "You really want to play off-worlder? I just want my drink in peace," Kade said. "You can help with that by sitting down." The Quran moved first, swinging with speed no drunk should have. But Kade was faster. He ducked, jabbed the thug's gut, then drove a knee into his side. The brute staggered back into a table, scattering drinks and curses. Before the rest of the gang could react, Kade had his blaster drawn. Anyone else? Silence. Then chairs scraped and the thugs backed off grumbling. The bartender snorted. You break it, you pay for it. Kade holstered the weapon and turned to the woman. You all right? She regarded him with unreadable eyes, almost crystalline in the low light. I'm not used to being rescued. Then maybe you need to visit better places? That earned him a very faint smile. You're not from around here. Nope. Crashed outside the ridge. You're either stupid or kind. Maybe both. I get that a lot. Kade extended a hand. Name's Kade Renar. She hesitated before replying. Soryn. Nice to meet you, Soryn. You made enemies just now, Kade Renar. Those thugs work for someone dangerous. I figured as much. She paused. I finished my shift in an hour. If you're still alive, meet me behind the tavern. We'll talk. Kade watched her walk away, wondering if he'd just been given a lifeline or stepped into something deeper than he'd planned. Either way, he'd be there. The twin moons of Rylath were just beginning to rise as Kade waited behind the tavern. The air was cooler now, but the heat still radiated from the baked earth like an invisible blanket. He kept his back to the corrugated wall blaster, loose at his side, eyes on the shadows. Footsteps, light, deliberate approach from the alley behind the tavern. Soryn appeared no longer in her threadbare server uniform. She now wore a utility jacket over fitted gear pants and carried a compact satchel across her chest. Her hair, previously tied back, now fell freely in strands of metallic white across her shoulders. You came, she said, her voice still measured but no longer guarded. You said we needed to talk, Kade replied. Besides, I wasn't keen on sitting around inside in case your fan club came back. They won't. Not tonight anyway. They lick their wounds longer than most. She gave a glance at his sidearm. You any good with that, good enough to still be alive? Then follow me. Without waiting, Soryn turned and slipped into the narrow path threading between shanties and rusted storage containers. Kade followed, keeping close. The deeper they went, the quieter. Brimvault became less drunken, shouting more whispering winds and the rattle of loose sheet metal. They reached a squat hexagonal building pressed against the perimeter wall of the settlement. A narrow security plate buzzed when Soryn scanned her wristband and the door hissed open. Inside was a single room, cramped but functional. A tiny stove, a fold-out cot, shelves stacked with salvage tech. But what caught Kade's eye was the back corner, a fully functional workbench covered in tool circuit boards and half-disassembled components. You're an engineer, he said, stepping inside. Used to be, she replied, setting her satchel down. Before I ended up here, he gestured to the bench. Looks like you haven't lost the knack. She didn't smile. Not all knowledge is a gift. Sometimes knowing how things work just means knowing how broken they are. Kade leaned against the doorway. So why bring me here? Because I think we can help each other. I'm listening. Soryn began unpacking her satchel, revealing a small projector. With a flick of her wrist, a holographic schematic flared to life between them, a wireframe outline of a large ship. This is the Brigari, a mid-range command freighter. But around here it's called the Stonewake. Belongs to Merrick Volish. Kade's brow furrowed. That the guy your pals at the bar work for? She nodded. Vol controls Brimvault and everything within 10 kilometers. Protection rackets, black market salvage, and trafficking. People mostly. Off-worlders. Kade crossed his arms. Let me guess. You're not just a bartender. I was a systems technician on a diplomatic vessel, Soryn said, voice flat. Vol's crew took our ship 2 cycles ago. Executed anyone who fought back. I survived because I knew how to keep things running. They like things that work. And now I'm done surviving, she said. I want out. And I want to take down as much of his operation as I can on the way. And where do I come in? She looked at him directly now, those crystal clear eyes sharp. Your ship's wrecked, but its core systems, weapon grid, nav relay defensive scramblers, they're solid tech. Older but stable. I saw it on the way in. You've got firepower, but no mobility, and you want to use it, Kade guessed. She nodded. There's a short-range shuttle docked on the Stonewake. If we steal it and bring parts back to your ship, we can get your mainframe weapons online. With a bit of engineering magic, we can punch a hole through whatever Vol sends after us. Kade considered it. You want to hit the Stonewake while it's in port. She'll be docked tomorrow. Minimal crew. Most will be planetside collecting their dues and drinking it away. He narrowed his eyes. There's more. What aren't you saying? She hesitated. The Stonewake has a holding bay. People. Caged. Most of them were taken from other trade ships. Some are just sold into mining syndicates. Others? Worse. You want to free them too? Yes. Kade rubbed his face. That's not a supply run. That's a raid. Soryn looked up at him, no apology in her face. They're not cargo. They're people. If I run and leave them, then I'm no better than the ones who left me behind. Kade stared at the floating schematic. The plan was half suicidal, but so was crashing into Rylith with a half-dead freighter. He sighed. All right, I'm in, but I need to get eyes on that shuttle bay first. I can get us inside, she said. I still have Vol's old access codes. They'll get us past security, but only once. We need to move fast. And the rest of the settlement don't expect help. They're scared, not stupid. He nodded. We'll need somewhere to regroup after we grab the parts. I know a place, she said. It's not much, but it's hidden. A moment passed between them, a mutual recognition of shared risk. Kade looked at her for a long moment before saying, all right then. We gear up. We rest. And tomorrow, we raise hell, Soryn finished. The next morning, the settlement stirred with sluggish activity. The Stonewake had docked an hour before dawn, its jagged silhouette casting long shadows over the canyon basin. The crew, half in uniform, half in scavenged armor, disembarked in waves, heading straight for the tavern and market stalls. Kade and Soryn watched from the ridge above, shielded by an overhang of rust-colored rock. She tapped a small device on her wrist, bringing up the ship's perimeter sensors. 2 guards at the main bay. No motion in the rear access. Looks like the secondary crew's still aboard, but scattered. Good. We getting quiet. Get the parts. Get the prisoners and get out. Simple. Kade arched an eyebrow. In theory, they descended the slope, careful not to kick loose any debris. At the loading ramp, Soryn activated the access panel. After a second's delay, the door hissed open, letting out a rush of cool, recycled air. Let's move. Inside the Stonewake was dim, metallic, and quiet. They kept low, weaving between cargo crates and power conduits. The ship hummed with latent power, but felt half asleep, perfect for infiltration. Soryn led them through auxiliary corridors. At the engineering level, she knelt at a panel and gestured. Shuttles beyond that bulkhead. And a sound. Kade's hand was on his blaster instantly. Muffled cries. From the vent duct nearby. Soryn's face tightened. That's the holding bay, right beneath us. They looked at each other. Both understood what had to happen. Kade nodded. Get the parts. I'll check the prisoners. She hesitated. Don't start a fight you can't win. I'll be quiet. That earned him a look. I'll try to be quiet. The holding bay was worse than Kade expected. Cramped cells lined the walls, filled with beings of various species, dirty, bruised, hopeless. As he approached, a feathered creature reached out with a trembling hand. Help! Kade's jaw clenched. He worked quickly, disabling the locks. As the last one clicked open, footsteps echoed behind him. Who the hell are you? Kade turned. A tall, armored figure stood at the threshold. Human-like. Dark hair tied in a knot. Black, pitiless eyes. I could ask you the same, Kade said. I'm Commander Volon. The air between them grew colder. Ah, Kade said. We were just leaving. I don't think so. Vol drew a curved blade from his hip. Kade barely had time to assess the distance between himself and the imposing figure of Commander Vol before the pirate captain lunged forward, his blade a blur of steel. Kade dodged to the side, the weapon slicing the air where his ribs had been moments before. The freed prisoners behind him cried out in alarm, scrambling back into the shadows of their unlocked cages. Vol advanced methodically, not rushing, just confident. Who are you to steal from me? Human Vol sneered, circling slowly. Do you have any idea who I am? Unfortunately, Kade replied, backing toward the control console. I do now. You'll regret that knowledge. Kade wasn't interested in witty retorts anymore. He drew his combat knife, short, balanced, worn from years of service. The blaster at his hip would be useless in the confined space with hostages so close. This would be close quarters. Personal. Vol came at him again this time, faster, feinting left and swinging right. Kade parried and countered with a jab that grazed Vol's shoulder, but barely slowed him down. The pirate captain grunted and swept low with a booted kick that sent Kade crashing into a support beam. Pain exploded in Kade's back. He barely rolled away before the next strike dented the metal where his head had been. Vol was strong, inhumanly so, and far more practiced than most raiders Kade had encountered. Not just muscle, military trained. "Come on," Vol growled. "Give me a challenge." Kade spit blood and straightened. "You talk too much." He lunged, aiming low. Vol blocked him, but Kade used the momentum to slam his shoulder into the pirate's ribs. They grappled the force of their collision, sending them both stumbling toward the center of the room. The prisoners shrank away from the fight, but when a blue-skinned four-armed thrall stepped closer. "I can help," the alien muttered. "Not yet," Kade hissed, ducking a punch. "Stay safe." Vol suddenly shoved him off and laughed. "You care about them." "What a waste." "Funny," Kade said, adjusting his grip on the knife. "I was thinking the same about you." This time, when Vol struck, Kade caught the swing, locked the pirate's wrist, and used Vol's own weight to throw him into the bars of a cell. Vol slammed hard and staggered, dazed for the first time. Kade didn't waste the chance. He grabbed a loose pipe from the ground and smashed it across Vol's back. The pirate dropped to a knee, groaning, but not down. The captain's blade flashed again, catching Kade along the ribs. He gasped as warmth bloomed beneath his shirt. Then came a voice from the corridor. Kade's Soryn stood in the doorway, a bag slung over her shoulder, eyes wide with shock. "Get them out," he shouted. She hesitated. Vol turned toward her, grin returning. "Ah, my little mechanic. I knew I smelled betrayal." Soryn's face hardened. "You've built this hell with stolen lives. I'm burning it down." Vol straightened, blood dripping from his mouth. "You won't survive long enough." Kade, bleeding but steady, stepped between them. "She's not alone," Vol smiled. "Then let's finish this." He charged, but Soryn was faster. She reached into her bag and lobbed a small canister into the room. It burst in a flash of smoke and light. Vol roared in anger and surprise. Kade grabbed her wrist. "Let's go." They herded the freed prisoners into the corridor. Alarms began to scream as proximity sensors were tripped and alert lights strobed red along the ceiling. "The hangar's not far," Soryn said, dragging open a maintenance hatch. "Secondary route. Fewer guards." Kade nodded, pressing a hand to his side to stem the bleeding. "Keep them moving." They crawled through ducts and narrow access tunnels, the group of rescued beings following in hushed silence. Twice they had to stop and wait for patrols to pass. One childlike alien cried softly, but Soryn whispered to calm her voice, steady despite the tension. Finally, they reached the hangar deck, a broad, echoing chamber lined with small freighters and supply shuttles. Only one craft sat prepped for launch, a compact dual-engine shuttle with its hatch half open. "There," Soryn said. "That's our ride." Then came the inevitable footsteps. Heavy, synchronized, unmistakable. Security reinforcements. A full squad, Vol's personal guard, rounded the corner, weapons raised. Behind them, Vol's voice echoed like a death knell. "Run all you like. You're still mine." Kade raised his blaster. "Go!" Now Soryn and the refugees sprinted toward the shuttle. Kade fired over their heads, pinning the guards at the far end of the hangar. Vol ducked behind a crate, returning fire with cold precision. Blaster bolts sizzled through the air. One skimmed Kade's shoulder. Another hit a crate, showering him with sparks. Still, he held the line, refusing to give them ground. The last of the prisoners reached the ramp. Soryn waved frantically. "Kade, get in!" He bolted toward the shuttle, diving inside as the hatch slammed shut behind him. Seconds later, Soryn was in the pilot's seat, hands flying across controls. "Strap in," she barked. "I'm bleeding out," he replied. "You think I'm moving?" She didn't argue. The shuttle rose on its thrusters, heat warping the air beneath it. The hangar bay doors began to close. "No time," Soryn said. "We're going through." The engines flared. The shuttle screamed out of the hangar as the bay doors slammed shut behind them, scraping their hull, but missing a deadly crush by seconds. They emerged into the pale Rylath sky, orange clouds swirling around them, and began descending toward Kade's crash site. "Think they'll follow," he asked, voice hoarse. Vol's not done, she said. But neither are we. Kade's head lolled back against the cold wall. Then we'd better finish this before he catches up. The shuttle landed in a sweeping plume of sand beside Kade's wrecked ship Starling. Dust hung in the air like smoke catching the waning light of Ryleth's twin suns. The desert was quiet, eerily so, except for the strained hum of the shuttle's cooling engines and the creaking of warped metal beneath them. Inside the shuttle, silence reigned. The freed prisoners huddled close, whispering in low alien voices. A few coughed. A couple of the smaller ones cried. One lay still, too weak to walk. Kade sat slumped near the door, blood seeping through his shirt, one hand pressed against his ribs. His face was pale jaw, tight. Soryn crouched beside him. You're not dying on me, Kade Renar. Not after all that. I don't plan to, he said through gritted teeth. But I'm not going for a jog either. She helped him up, slinging his arm over her shoulder. We need to move everyone to Starling. It's our best shot at survival. Kade blinked against the sweat in his eyes. Can she fly? Not yet, she admitted. But we've got parts now. Give me time. He nodded, trusting her. Then let's get to work. The inside of Starling felt like a hollowed-out carcass. Most systems were dark or in standby mode, the emergency power cells barely alive. But it was still more shelter than the shuttle, and with Kade's access codes, the ramp hissed open and the interior lights flickered on. The passengers filed in, exhausted. Soryn directed the stronger ones to help carry the injured. They converted the main cargo bay into a temporary sleeping area, stacking blankets and sealed crates into makeshift bedding. Soryn wasted no time. She dropped her bag of salvaged parts on the engineering console and set to work. Kade, despite Soryn's protests, staggered into the bridge and dropped into the pilot seat. He keyed in diagnostics and sighed. The engines were still offline. Navigation was wrecked, but the weapons grid, if the core could be reconnected, could work again. He pressed the comm button. Soryn, I'm here, came her voice through the crackling internal channel. Just cracked the housing on the capacitor array. Your ship's got a stubborn streak. She takes after her captain. A pause. Then a dry chuckle. Figures. Kade leaned back, wincing. Status stabilizer is junk, but I can reroute thrust control through the lower vents. I'll have partial lift if I patch the coolant system with the shuttle's intake filters. Can we fly if I can keep it from overheating, she said. We'll have one shot, maybe two. Then make it count. Hours passed in fits and starts. Soryn worked like someone possessed, focused, efficient, relentless. Her hands flew over wires and conduits, fingers smudged with grease and old blood. Despite the madness of the last day, she never wavered. Kade, when he wasn't slipping in and out of light sleep, watched her from the bridge cameras. He'd seen a lot of technicians in his time, some gifted, some lucky. But Soryn had something else. Precision, willpower. Rage, perhaps, but focused rage like a blade honed from fire. By the time night fell again over the desert, Starling's systems hummed with cautious life. Cooling vents exhaled warm air, and internal lighting steadied to a soft white glow. Soryn climbed to the bridge, wiping her hands on her jacket. Weapons are up. Engines. Responsive but temperamental. Still no long-range comms. If someone comes looking, we won't see them until they're on us. Kade gestured to the co-pilot's seat. Sit. Take a breath. She did slowly. In the silence, the tension seemed to melt off her frame, leaving something softer. Tired but calm. They're sleeping, she said. Most of them anyway. The Thrall big one, with the 4 arms, he's taken charge, helping keep them organized. Good, Kade said. They'll need a leader when this is over. Soryn turned to him, her expression unreadable. You still planning to run? He looked out the viewport past the canyon ridges under the starlight. I came here by accident, but I don't believe in leaving people behind. We started something. We finish it. She tilted her head. You sure you've been stabbed, burned, shot at, and you still haven't asked me for a reward? I figured freedom was enough. She studied him for a long moment, then stood. Come with me. He followed, limping slightly. She led him to the far end of Starling, into the old medbay. It had seen better days, but some of the equipment still functioned. She sat him on the bench and began cleaning his wound. You're lucky, she said softly. Another inch and the blade would have hit your liver. Yeah, he muttered. I tend to flirt with bad odds. She looked up, her fingers stilling. You flirt with everything. Kade raised a brow. That a complaint Soryn didn't answer. Instead, she finished wrapping the bandage, her hands lingering a moment too long against his skin. Then she stepped back. I don't know what happens next, she said. Neither do I, he replied. But I know I want to be there when it does. She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that only came after fire. Then stay close. Later that night, as the ship powered down into silent standby, Kade and Soryn sat by the open maintenance hatch, gazing at the stars. The desert was cold now, wind whispering through the rocks like ghosts. Inside, the refugees slept in hushed peace, unaware of what loomed just beyond the edge of the sky. Kade watched her, moonlight casting her in soft silver. There's something about this place, he said. Soryn didn't look at him. It's where I died, and where I was reborn. He nodded slowly. Then maybe it's where I start again too. A pause. Then she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded white towel. She handed it to him, fingers brushing his. He frowned. What's this for? In my culture, she said softly, offering someone a towel means you trust them and want them to stay. Kade stared at the towel for a beat, then looked back at her. I'm staying. At first light, the desert stirred with uneasy silence. The wind swept low across the canyon floor, kicking up fine red dust and the scent of scorched metal. Kade stood outside Starling, one hand resting against her battered hull, the other shielding his eyes from the sun. The ship groaned gently in the breeze, her patch systems humming to life in idle pulses. Soryn stepped out beside him, tightening the straps on her utility harness. She's holding steady. The coolant reroute is working better than expected. Think we could lift off if we had to. For a few minutes, she replied. Enough to make a quick jump. Maybe less. Kade nodded. That might be all we need. Soryn studied him. Something's bothering you. He didn't answer immediately. His eyes scanned the horizon. Vol's not dead. He didn't go down with the stonewake. He'll come. He doesn't take failure lightly, she agreed. He'll want blood. Then let's give him something else to chase. He turned and gestured toward a nearby outcropping, where the four-armed Thrail, whose name they'd learned was Bralak, was directing the freed captives to cover the shuttle's tracks. Some were laying out metal debris to confuse scans. Others were scrawling false trail markers in Rylathian dialects. Soryn raised a brow. Misdirection. Buy us time, Kade said. Make it look like we fled northeast toward the salt plains. That's where Vol will go first. She nodded approvingly. And meanwhile, we prep this ship for war. Inside Starling, the ship hummed with renewed activity. Soryn had fully restored auxiliary power, and with the stolen parts from the stonewake, she now had basic targeting systems online. Kade had already started calibrating the old turret mount, an outdated but powerful cannon that had served him well on border patrol runs. You've done this before, she said, watching him realign the rotary housing. Frontier Corps, he replied. We handled escort runs in fringe space. Pirates, smugglers, raiders. Got into plenty of fights. She smirked. And here I thought you were just a reckless freelancer. I'm that too. Bralak entered then, ducking beneath the low ceiling. Tracks are done. Confused any scans within 50 clicks. If they come looking, they'll chase ghosts. Good, Kade said. And the others resting. They've eaten. Spirits are cautious. Soryn stepped forward. We'll need their help soon. Vol won't come quietly. He never does, Braluk growled. But we'll stand with you. The alien's conviction sent a strange warmth through Kade's chest. Not just relief, something like pride. These weren't trained soldiers. They were survivors. But maybe that made them stronger. As the sun climbed higher, Kade and Soryn met in the ship's cockpit, running through contingency plans. Kade tapped the nav display, now jury-rigged with an external sensor array Soryn had built from scrap. If Vol's still using his old scouting patterns, Kade said he'll approach from high altitude and drop fast. He's impatient, likes shock and awe. Can we match that? Not directly? But we can fake a power surge, overload the local grid, then let him think we're crashing again. Lure him into a trap. Kade smiled. He expects us to run. Let's disappoint him. Soryn leaned back in the chair watching him. You change in a fight. He raised a brow. How so you become focused, deadly, like everything else falls away? He paused. It has to, or people die. She looked at him with something unreadable in her eyes. What would you be if you didn't have to fight? Kade thought about it. Still drifting, still looking. For what he turned toward her? This. The warning came just before dusk. A flash in the sky, too small to be a meteor, too fast for a trade vessel. Bruluk saw it first. Incoming. East Ridge. Not a transport. Kade's blood went cold. It's him. The ship was unmistakable. Sleek, dark, angular voles, personal gunship Asheville. It dropped from orbit like a dagger engine screaming. As it approached, it loosed a burst of warning fire flashes, of violet plasma scorching the sand in wide arcs. He's not wasting time, Soryn muttered, already moving. Kade was close behind, everyone inside. Bruluk, seal the main hatch. Get the passengers to the lower deck. Lock the emergency bulkheads. And you, the Thrall asked. We fight. The ash veil hovered low, casting a monstrous shadow across the canyon floor. The cargo doors slid open mid-air, and figures dropped from the sky. Vol's private guards in powered exo-armor, descending on burst thrusters, weapons drawn. Inside Starling, Soryn rerouted shield power to the forward array. The ship shuddered as plasma fire hit the outer hull. Shields won't hold, she said. They don't have to, just long enough. Kade took his place at the main gun. The moment the first enemy landed, he opened fire. The old cannon screamed to life, lancing searing bolts into the sky. One of Vol's soldiers exploded mid-air, scattering armor and flame across the rocks. The others split formation, weaving in an evasive pattern. One reached the hull and began cutting through the side panel. Soryn, Kade called. I see him. She activated the venting system, releasing a blast of scalding gas from the side exhaust. The attacker screamed as he was thrown clear, his suit steaming. Kade kept firing, taking out a second attacker before a warning flashed on the screen. Guns overheating. We're losing secondary shielding, Soryn called back. If Ashevale lands, we're done. And then came the voice through the comms, cold and clear. Kade, Renar, Vol said, you should have run. This isn't your fight. Kade opened the channel. You made it mine when you took those people. You made it personal when you hurt her. A low chuckle. Soryn always did inspire loyalty. It's a shame she's never kept it. Soryn's fist clenched, but she said nothing. Vol continued. You can still walk away. Leave the ship. Leave her. I might even let you live. Kade smiled without humor. You don't know me, Vol. He cut the comms, then turned to Soryn. Get ready. We're not done yet. Vol's gunship Asheville circled overhead like a predator, the scream of its engines rising and falling in waves. Below, Starling sat hunched in the dirt, battered but defiant like a wolf, baring its teeth despite the blood on its muzzle. Inside, Kade and Soryn worked in near silence. Every second counted. Every sound from the hull could signal another breach. Soryn yanked open a side panel beneath the co-pilot's console wires, sparking as she reached in. I'm rerouting emergency power to the kinetic shield buffer. It won't stop heavy ordnance, but it might block another boarding attempt. Do it, Kade said, fingers flying over the targeting console. How many are left? 3 on the ground. 1 circling the upper decks. Vol hasn't landed yet. He's waiting, Kade muttered. Watching, like he always does. Soryn glanced at him. You've faced men like him before, too many. They talk about strength, pride, control, but all they care about is fear. That's what they feed on. She paused, and you, Kade, turned to her. I fight for people who don't get to. Always have. She stared at him for a beat too long, then returned to the wiring. Then you're exactly what he fears. Outside, the battlefield was shifting. Bruluk and several of the stronger refugees had taken up improvised weapons and set traps around the outer perimeter, jagged rebar spike pits, flash grenades cobbled together from old engine cores, and distraction lures made from proximity beacons. One of Vol's soldiers triggered a proximity lure near a fuel canister. The resulting blast lit up the canyon wall, throwing debris high into the air. A cheer went up from the Starling's lower deck. He's testing us, Soryn said from the bridge. Probing for weak spots. Kade narrowed his eyes at the approaching blips on the radar. Let's give him one. They initiated the bait plan an hour later. Kade opened the starboard cargo door just wide enough to be noticed, then powered down Starling's forward lights and vented minimal plasma just enough to simulate a failing core. Within 5 minutes, 2 of Vol's soldiers advanced cautiously toward the exposed hatch. Hold, Kade whispered, crouched inside the dim corridor with his blaster drawn. Soryn watched from the auxiliary station. Closer. Closer. The moment they passed the threshold, the magnetic floor clamps triggered. The 2 armored soldiers froze as a blinding strobe detonated from the ceiling. Kade moved in. 1 shot to the knee joint of the exosuit, another across the visor. The first soldier went down hard. The second recovered quickly, swinging a massive shock baton. Kade ducked beneath the blow and slammed his elbow into the soldier's armpit gap, followed by a stun blast from his pistol. Both enemies crumpled. 2 down, Kade breathed. Any sign of Vol? No visual, Soryn said. But the ash veil is descending. He's coming. They didn't have long to prepare. Kade set the wounded soldiers in a sealed compartment with their weapons stripped. He doubted Vol would care enough to come for them, but it bought time. When he returned to the bridge, Soryn was staring at the viewport. Something's wrong, she said. He stepped beside her. Ash veil hovered 100 meters out, slowly lowering to the ground. What do you see? Look at the engine signature. Kade's brow furrowed. It's pulsing irregularly. Controlled fluctuation. That's not just a landing pattern, it's a targeting cycle. Realization struck. He's not coming to board. Soryn's eyes widened. He's going to destroy the ship. The ash veil's underbelly began to glow. A pulse cannon, typically ship-to-ship combat grade, was building charge. He wants to end it in 1 shot, Kade growled, to send a message. Soryn spun toward the rear terminal. We have 30 seconds. Kade didn't hesitate. Divert power to the repulsor array. If we can't outrun it, maybe we can survive it. She grabbed a loose harness and clipped it to the emergency rail. It won't be enough. He grabbed her shoulder. Then we need to punch back. In the main corridor, Kade opened a hidden panel, an emergency fallback from Starling's military retrofitting. Inside a handheld plasma lance, a reinforced shock shield, and a coded override beacon. He clipped the beacon to his belt and turned back to Soryn. I'm going to the surface. You won't make it in time. He locked eyes with her. I'm not going to stop the shot. I'm going to make Vol think twice about firing it. She understood instantly. You're baiting him. If he sees me outside standing in his line of fire, he hesitates. She grabbed his arm. It's suicide. No, he said, stepping in closer. It's leverage. Then he reached into his pocket and handed her the white towel she'd given him 2 nights ago. Hold on to this. I'm coming back for it. Kade emerged into the howling wind plasma lance, slung across his back shield strapped to 1 arm. Ash veil loomed before him, monstrous and silent, its pulse cannon growing brighter with each passing second. He walked slowly, deliberately toward the center of the clearing. He made sure the ship's external cameras caught every step. At 20 paces from the gunship's nose, he stopped and planted his feet. He lifted the shield high. Come on, Vol, he thought. Look at me. See what you've made. The glow intensified, then pulsed, but it did not fire. The comm crackled. You're a fool, Renar. Kade grinned. Maybe, but I'm the fool standing between you and victory. Inside, Ash Veil Vol watched from behind the cockpit's polarized glass. His jaw clenched. The pulse cannon cycled down slowly, not because he couldn't fire, but because for the first time he wasn't sure what would happen if he did. Kade had stolen that certainty. Suddenly, another signal came through Starling's radar. A ship small, fast, unmarked, pierced the upper atmosphere. Soryn saw it first. That's not one of ours. Then she caught the ID ping. No way. Kade's voice came through the comm. Soryn, talk to me. I see something inbound. You're not going to believe this, she said. The Mariner's Path? It's a diplomatic courier vessel. Rylith's old patrol. I used to serve on it. Kade blinked. Your old crew, no. I thought it was destroyed. But that signal, it's been modified. Someone's been using it to patrol refugee routes. The Mariner's Path was approaching fast and aiming straight for Ashvale. Kade shouted, everyone brace for intercept. The incoming ship streaked down like a falling star, engines flaring blue and loud as thunder. Kade watched from the clearing, dust swirling around him, eyes locked on the sharp, sleek form of the Mariner's Path as it dove. A diplomatic vessel once thought lost, now reborn, as something more, a symbol maybe, or a ghost answering a call that hadn't been made in words. Ashvale's pulse cannon powered down completely. The advantage was slipping from Vol's grip. Kade activated his comm. Soryn's status Mariner's Path is hailing Ashvale, no response yet, she said quickly. Their transponder codes are authentic. They're broadcasting open channels across civil frequencies. Whatever Vol's planning, it's about to get exposed. Inside Starling, the refugees were huddled together, tension in every expression. Bralook stood by the main hatch, armed with a scavenged blaster. The rest watched Soryn, sensing the momentum shift, but unsure what it meant. Kade, still standing in full view between the two ships, heard the deep, unfamiliar voice crackle into his ear. This is Commander Avon of the Mariner's Path. Unidentified gunship, your weapon systems are live in a protected neutral zone. Power down and prepare for inspection. You are in violation of Interstellar Convention Section 7-14. A pause. Then Vol's voice returned, quiet but venomous. You think hiding behind an old flag makes you safe, Path? This is Rylith. There are no conventions here. Avon answered with calm authority. There are now. Vol's decision came fast. Ashvale spun to the side, banking away sharply, engines blazing. A coward's exit, but not before launching a volley of suppression fire toward the ridge above Starling. The canyon erupted. Kade dove sideways as an explosion rocked the sand behind him, his shield taking the brunt of the blast. Stone shrapnel tore through the air. He hit the ground, hard head ringing. Through the smoke, he saw Ashvale rising fast, furious, and turning back for another strike run. He's not leaving, Soryn said into the comm. He's going to level the canyon. Not if we hit first, Kade growled. He sprinted toward Starling, limping slightly, lungs burning. The cargo bay door opened with a groan, and Bralook helped pull him in. Get to the turret, Soryn called. Kade didn't need to be told twice. He rushed to the gunnery pod and strapped in. Systems online. Crosshairs bright. The targeting system locked onto Ashvale just as it made its second pass. Kade exhaled. Let's dance. Vol's ship was faster, newer, better armed, but Kade had the high ground positioned on a rocky outcropping partially shielded by natural terrain. He fired 3 shots in succession. The first missed. The second scorched Ashvale's left thruster. The third, clean and true, struck the ventral stabilizer. Ashvale veered violently. Inside, the gunship alarms blared. Vol gritted his teeth, ignoring the warnings, struggling to stabilize. Smoke filled the cockpit. He'd underestimated them. Underestimated her. On Starling's bridge, Soryn's eyes flicked to the damage readings. He's losing altitude. Bring the cannon around, Kade shouted. Line up a finish, I can't. He's too high now. We'd risk overheating the coil. Kade swore. Then we bring him down another way. From the corner of the room, Bralook stepped forward. Let me take the railgun sled. Kade blinked. That thing barely works. Bralook grinned, tusked teeth gleaming. One shot's enough. Without waiting, the 4-armed alien climbed out the side maintenance hatch and positioned the jury-rigged rail sled on the upper ridge. Soryn fed power from the external coil, keeping the signal faint to avoid lock-on. Ashvale circled once more, preparing for a last strike. A suicide run. Vol's voice came back static, glitched and furious. If I fall, I'll take you all with me. No, Soryn muttered under her breath. Not today. Bralook aimed the railgun. Fired. A brilliant white bolt cut through the dusk. It hit. Ashvale's hull buckled. The stabilizer exploded. The ship spiraled. Vol screamed into the comms, fury turning to static. Then silence. And fire. The wreckage of Ashvale slammed into the canyon wall in a ball of flame and shrapnel, lighting the cliffs like a sun reborn. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Starling erupted in cheers. Kade slumped in the gunner's chair, breath heavy. Soryn appeared beside him. You okay? I'll survive. He looked up at her. We all will. She knelt, her hand reaching for his. You did it. He shook his head. We did. From the viewport, the Mariner's Path descended, slowly deploying landing struts beside the wreckage of Ashvale. Uniformed crew emerged, weapons raised, securing the area. Then came Commander Avon, tall, broad-shouldered, in a clean uniform patched with Old Republic colors. He walked with purpose toward Starling. Soryn met him at the ramp. Avon, she said softly, stunned. I thought you were dead. He smiled, older than she remembered, but not broken. No, just buried under politics. When the fleet fell apart, we kept running patrols. Quiet ones. He looked past her at the gathered refugees. You've been busy. We saved them, she said. And ourselves. He nodded solemnly. Then I think it's time we get you all off this rock. That night the campfire burned low. The refugees, free now for the first time in years, ate real food and wrapped themselves in real blankets. Some wept, some sang, some stared into the fire like it held all the answers they'd ever need. Kade and Soryn sat apart on a ridge, watching the twin moons of Ryleth rise. She's gone, Soryn said. The woman I was before this. She died when Vol took my crew. I thought revenge would bring her back. Kade looked at her. Did it? She shook her head. But something better showed up instead. He was quiet a moment. What now? She held out the towel again, creased a little, burned at the corner, but still whole. In my culture, she said softly, accepting the towel again means something else. He took it slowly, fingers brushing hers. And what's that you've chosen your place? Kade looked up at her. I think I already did. They leaned in forehead to forehead, words unnecessary. For the first time, the stars felt less empty. 3 days later, the canyons of Ryleth echoed with the roar of engines, not weapons fire, but liftoff. For the first time in decades, Mariner's Path carried more than just secrets. It carried survivors. The ship's once sterile corridors were now filled with life-alien families huddled together, exhausted but free voices, soft with cautious hope. Kade stood by one of the observation windows watching the dust trails shrink below. The wreckage of Ashvale was still visible from orbit, twisted, charred, and half swallowed by the desert. A broken monument to the past. He didn't feel triumphant, just lighter. Soryn approached silently, her bootsteps muted on the polished floor. She wore a clean jacket, now new, but with the same shape and color as the one she'd worn when they first met. Her hair was tied back in a practical braid, and a data pad rested in her hand. Brooke's leading the settlement party, she said without preamble. We found an old trade station in orbit around Selvarthur, abandoned but stable. The refugees are going to make it a home. Kade glanced at her. He's a good choice. Strong. Fair. He asked for your help. He wants you there as liaison. Says you speak the language of stubborn survival. Kade chuckled, flattering. Soryn sat beside him. But I told him no. Kade raised an eyebrow. Oh, she turned to face him, eyes bright. Because I need you elsewhere. Where she handed him the data pad. Displayed across the screen was a list of planets' coordinates and notes, coded messages, hidden signals, and fragments of intercepted communications. All led to one conclusion. There are more, she said. More ships, more people, more slaves. Vol wasn't the only one. Kade stared at the names. Worlds he'd never been to. Systems barely charted. Places the stars forgot. You want to go after them. I want to find them, she said, and help them. He looked at her long and hard. That's not an easy mission. No, she said, her voice firm, but it's the right one. Kade leaned back, exhaling. You know, I came to Ryleth looking to deliver a shipment and maybe make a little money. Didn't expect to lose a ship, take down a pirate warlord, or fall for a half-alien engineer with a righteous temper. She smirked. And now, he said, wrapping an arm around her shoulders, I figure I might as well finish what we started. They renamed Starling before departure. The hull had been patched and rearmored using components from Mariner's Path and salvaged materials. She looked nothing like the freighter that had crash-landed in the canyon. They called her Vow Keeper. It was Soryn's idea. When Kade asked why, she simply said, because promises matter, and Kade agreed. They took their first crew from the freed refugees, volunteers who wanted to give back. Brooke came, of course, though he grumbled at leaving the new colony. Others joined too, a feathered healer named Coley, a mute scout with 6 eyes and fast hands, and a tech-savvy pair of twins who barely spoke, but finished each other's sentences like echoes. It wasn't a traditional crew, but it was a family. On their first mission, they followed a ghost signal to the wreck of a transport ship drifting near the ruins of a mining colony. Inside, they found 6 survivors and a data core containing records of forced labor contracts dating back over a decade. One of the captives cried when Soryn handed them food. The next mission led them into the storm clouds of a gas giant, where a slaver barge used lightning storms to mask its heat signature. It almost cost them their engines. But Vowkeeper got in and out barely, and 52 beings saw sunlight for the first time in years. The ship gained scars. So did they. But they also gained purpose. Late one cycle as Vowkeeper drifted near the edge of a system with no name. Kade stood outside the medbay watching Soryn repair a damaged sensor drone. Her hands moved with practiced ease, but her expression was distant. He stepped in. "You okay?" She looked up. "Yeah, just tired." He sat beside her. "We can rest. Stay docked for a few weeks. Let the crew relax." She shook her head. "That's not it." "Then what is?" Soryn hesitated, then reached into her jacket and pulled out something small and folded. "The towel. I kept it," she said softly. "Even when I thought you were going to bleed out in that canyon. Even when we didn't know if we'd live another day." He smiled. "Towels are hard to come by out here." She smacked him lightly, then turned serious. "Kade, in my people's culture, we have a final meaning for this." He nodded. "Tell me." "It means home," she said. "That no matter how far you travel, if you hold this, you always know where you belong." Kade stared at the towel, then at her, and he understood. He took her hand. "I'm already home," he whispered. Epilogue echoes among the stars. They never found all the slavers, but they found enough. Every life they saved, every outpost they liberated, every scar they healed, it mattered. News of the Vowkeeper spread through the fringe worlds like myth. A ship crewed by runaways and rebels. A captain with a voice like gravel and fists like truth. A woman with green skin and silver fire in her eyes who could make dead engines sing. They weren't heroes in the traditional sense, but in the darkest corners of space where hope was currency and freedom, a dream, they were something rare. They were real, and it had all started with a towel.